Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Prabhuji, Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The speaker on the
hour. Faster flying from Florida. Everyone's leaving New York City Memorial Weekend. So we've been asked to speak about forgiveness, and I want to put forgiveness into a context of the modes of nature, and then by doing this, by studying forgiveness, we see it's a very sattvic position, sattvic state of consciousness, and then we can talk about the other qualities in sattva guna and how it's important. So, you know, in Bhagavad Gita, there's a list of the qualities of Brahmins. I can just talk about it, or turn that up. Krishna. Sama, Dhamma, Tapo, Socha, Shanti, Raja. List the qualities of Brahmins. Brahmins are equipoise, Sama, Dhamma, there's sense control, Tapa, they live a life of austerity, Socham, they're clean, Arjavam, honest, religious, Astikam, etc. Then you might say, I'm not a Brahmin, so I don't have to worry about, all. But as aspiring devotees, we're meant to be more than a Brahmin, higher than a Brahmin. So whenever you see the Brahminical qualities, what you're seeing is just sattvic qualities of sattva gunas. And so there are three modes of nature: passion, ignorance, and sattvic. And so most of our society is in the mode of ignorance. There's some passion, but mostly it's ignorance. And so we have a problem. And the problem is, when we try to purify ourselves, we have all these tamasic samskars, which we picked up in the culture we live in. The values of society, they're very tamasic. And so, for example, if someone hurts us, often we feel like we want to hurt them when we get even. Isn't it? Even this shouldn't affect us, but we're trying to be devotees. It wouldn't affect the devotee, but we're trying to be devotees. We're not there yet, right? We're on the way. So naturally, as a human being, we get hurt when we're mistreated. And sometimes we feel it's unfair, we feel revengeful, and sometimes we may even wish something bad happens to another person. I'm not going to ask you to raise hands if you've ever done that. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but that's human nature, isn't it? We're generally not so nice and kind to people unless they're nice and kind to us. That's human nature, right? If I give you on your birthday a $10,000 Rolex watch, what are you going to give me on my birthday? Not a pair of socks. I hope not. And if I give you a pair of socks on your birthday, you're not going to give me a $10,000 Rolex watch. Probably. Unless you really love me. So that's human nature, isn't it? Yeah. So we are practicing to be devotees, and we feel this. And resentment is a very human quality. We are hurt. We feel. We feel betrayed or let down or cheated or whatever it is. And then you go to Shastra, and then you see, how does a real devotee respond when they're hurt? What do they say? What do they do? How do they respond? And we have lots of examples which are way beyond our pay level. Like, how do you respond when your father turns against you and tries to kill you? How do you respond? By praying that he's liberated, right? That's how you respond. Yeah? Of course not. We respond by calling the police, taking him to court, disowning in the service. And Prahlad Maharaj, he's praying for his father's liberty. Right? Crazy. Crazy. Can you hear it? Crazy. From the material point of view, it's crazy. And when you're coming to ISKCON and thinking about becoming a devotee, if they had a little form, and you know, this is like qualified, you only have some questions. And one of the questions is, if somebody tried to kill you, would you pray for them? For their well-being? And if the answer is no, you can't join ISKCON. Like, we have nobody in ISKCON. Right? Or the only people in ISKCON we have are like sadhus for 100 lifetimes. Of course I pray for him. Yeah. So we join ISKCON, and then we find out later that's actually what we're learning to do to become like that. To follow the examples that are set in Shastra. But as I said, let's broaden this and just talk about sattva guna. These are qualities of sattva guna. And we don't always act in sattva guna because we weren't raised that way. Compete, get ahead, don't let him take advantage of you. You're not going to take that, are you? You're going to get back at him. We're not like, no, you go, you win the prize, I'll help you, get a better position in the company. That's not our culture. I mean, it's the Krishna conscious culture, but it's not the culture of the world. So, now we have a problem. It's not really a problem, but it's something to consider. That if you want to advance spiritually, genuinely, not just ritualistically, externally, that you do everything proper externally, but if you want to advance spiritually, you have to at least situate yourself in the mode of goodness. Because the qualities of the good mode of goodness and the consciousness in the mode of goodness are the qualities and consciousness we need to cultivate spiritual life. And so the problem, the challenge we have is that we're raised to look at spirituality, not really spiritual, but to look at religion. So in religion, you don't have to be in the mode of goodness. You just have to do the puja, give the donation, show up at the right time for arti, say the prayer, do whatever ritual it is, right? Get the priest to do the samskars, and then you're religious, and you can be like, not really a good person, but you can be religious, right? You can be a bad person and be religious. And so that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to develop purity and at least mode of goodness. So let me explain why this is important. You have three modes of nature, so let's consider the modes like on a vertical line. So above the three modes is Krishna, the transcendental world. It's called Vishuddha Sattva. Transcendental is the sattva, or pure goodness. And then below that you have the material world. So there's the material world, which is made of sattva, rajas, and tamas, goodness, passion, and ignorance. And then above that there's transcendence, which is called Vishuddha Sattva. And sattva means goodness, and if you study sattva, you'll see the qualities of sattva are basically spiritual qualities: kindness, compassion, empathy, seeing everyone equally, seeing everyone spiritually, spiritual knowledge, vegetarianism, attraction to nature, and then passion, and being selfless, giving, pure motive, like that. So these are all conducive to advancing spiritually because you need these qualities. Then if you go down to passion, passion is defined as it's selfishness. It's like, I am very motivated for one reason, because I want it for myself. Sattva guna, you're motivated because it's right. Not necessarily you want it, or you're attached to it, or you're repulsed by it, but sattva guna is you do it because it's right. This is the right thing to do. Like, you may get married, your parents arranged the marriage, 20 years later, it's like, how's your marriage going? It's okay. I wish I could have picked my wife. I wish I could have picked my husband. But if you're in sattva guna, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. You do it because it's the right thing to do. Like Krishna's telling Arjuna, fight because it's the right thing to do, not because you want to, not because you don't want to, just because it's Dharma. So you do what's right. It's not about you. But in Rajagun, it's all about, I do it because I want it. And so, you'll see people who are very determined, very inspired, and you'll think, wow, he's not even a devotee, and he's more determined than I am. But in Rajagun, you're determined because you've got something there for you. That's what you want to do. Why is he determined? I want to achieve this, I want to achieve that, become the wealthiest this, the best this, the best. And it's all about prestige and, wealth and so forth. Isn't it? So they're very motivated. So Rajagun is all about, what do I want? What's in it for me? That's where the motive comes from. And then Tamagun is all about ignorance, laziness, craziness, procrastination. And Prabhupada said modern society is basically in ignorance. Like, if you drive through New Jersey in the parts, the industrial areas, or you drive through any big city, at least this is how I think. When I'm in India and driving through a very congested area, I always think, I turn to the devotees and say, do you think if anyone was conceiving of a city, they would design it like this? And of course the answer is, no way. They wouldn't design it like this. Would they? Everyone crowded together. Nobody would design it that way. They would make more space and more homes, less apartments like that. So, motive ignorance is just, it's a not well thought out. It's like what's going on in the world, polluting the environment, people not being conscious, not being motivated for the right things. So, here's Krishna, here's Sattva, here's Rajas, and here's Tamas. So it's very easy to understand why we need to be in Sattva, because where is Sattva in relation to Krishna? It's right next to Krishna. Where's Tamas in relation to Krishna? It's just further away from Krishna. You get like Tamagun would be pride, arrogance, these demoniac qualities you read in the Gita. Now, one of the most interesting things about this discussion is that you may remember that Bhishma Dev had a blessing, a benediction, at will. So when he was shot full of arrows, he decided he will die at a certain time when Krishna comes and we can see him. And Krishna thought, okay, this is good. And I want Yudhisthira to hear from Bhishma. Because Yudhisthira is now going to be ruling the world. So he arranged that Yudhisthira would come to see Bhishma when he was dying, and he would give him instruction. And you can read it in Bhagavatam. It's quite interesting. Bhishma Dev lists the qualities, I think there are 9 qualities of a human being. Not a sadhu, a human being. So we're going to have a test today to see if are you ready? Actually, I only know 2 of them. I can only remember 2. But for the sake of this discussion, one of the things he said is not to become angry. So if you ever become angry, you're demoted from human life to less than equal. But he said to not be, to be forgiving. That's quality of human beings, to be forgiving. So we like say, oh, forgiveness is to forgive is divine. But Bhishma Dev is saying, no, that's just entrance into human life. And we've become so Tamasic in our culture that we've exalted forgiveness at such a high level. And Bhishma Dev is saying, no, that's just human. That's just what humans do. Isn't that interesting? One time, Prabhupada said, he was talking about the 4 regulative principles. So for a lot of us, when we hear the 4 regulative principles or we follow them, we think, wow, I'm amazing. I follow these 4 principles. I'm a saint. Because it's very rare that someone would follow all these principles. And Prabhupada said, no, these aren't even spiritual principles. These are just principles of human life. This is what in any civilized human society, this is what would go on. Right? Did you know that? It's just moral, it's piety. because so Prabhupada explained, if you don't have basic piety, how can you build any kind of spiritual practice on a foundation of immorality or less than sattva guna? You can't. So, I just wanted to contextualize this when we say forgiveness and go, well, that's a divine quality and etc. Yeah, you can say it's divine, but you can also say it's just grammatical. It's the mode of goodness. So Prabhupada said, any Brahmin, any sadhu, one of the main qualities is to be forgiving, compassion. It's just, it's like your bread and butter, so to speak, or your dal rice and chapati. Is that the equivalent of bread and butter? You know bread and butter? Basic. Dal rice chapati. That's your dal rice chapati. All right. That's basic foundation. That's what it is. So I think what's extremely important for us is to recognize that in the practice of spiritual life, you have ritual, and then you have the development of your consciousness, and the ritual was meant to develop your consciousness. And if the consciousness doesn't develop properly, then the ritual is not effective. And the ritual alone is not going to bleed. It's not what we're trying. We're not trying to perfect ritual. Even like with japa, some people just try to perfect pronunciation or chant at a certain time, and they're really not chanting with a lot of bhakti, and they're more focused on the process, and they think that's success. So that's not the success. We're trying to develop our character. We're trying to develop the qualities of devotees. So forgiveness is just one of many qualities, which, okay, so that's the material side of it. Now we take it to the spiritual side, because it does have the spiritual side. But the spiritual side of forgiveness is a little bit different than forgiveness in general. Because forgiveness in general would be not to hold any ill feeling towards someone. But in spiritual side, forgiveness is, well, I'll just explain. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is quite interesting. He said in Bhakti has three components. This is from a book called Jaiva Dharma. After you read all Prabhupada's books, you should read this book. It's amazing. I can explain what Jaiva Dharma is like. Can we move in? So, because there's hundreds of more people coming, they're all there.
Some can sit up also.
So, this book called Jaiva Dharma. The Dharma of the Jiva. So, in the book he says Bhakti is made of three things. It's made of compassion, it's made of humility, and believe it or not, it's made of forgiveness. And most devotees don't know this. Because most devotees, if you ask, what's the position of forgiveness in Bhakti, they would say, I'm not sure, or it's extracurricular. It's like, yeah, it's good if you have it. I think many devotees at least would think, if you ask them about forgiveness in Bhakti, they would say, well, good if you have it, but it's not like anything. Here Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, no, it's essential. And so he explains. Compassion means I cannot tolerate to see another person suffer. That's compassion. Humility means I cannot cause another person to suffer on my account. In other words, they hurt me, but I will not retaliate. That's humility. So humility and compassion. Does that make sense? Compassion. Yeah, that's the meaning of compassion. If you're suffering, I suffer. Of course, that's a very elevated state, but that's, Prabhupada said, compassion is the unique quality of a Vaishnava amongst all other spiritualists. Compassion is unique, and what makes it a devotee, a Vaishnava, exalted. That's what makes a sadhu is his compassion. And so he wants to relieve the suffering of other people, and He feels the pain of others. And so, if a Vaishnava is hurt, if a devotee is hurt, as normal people, we want to retaliate, but they'll think, I don't want anyone to suffer. I suffer when I see them suffer, and I certainly don't want them to suffer on my account. So Glenn Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, if you take humility and compassion and blend them up in your blender, what do you get? You get forgiveness. When you put those two together, like, I don't want to see people suffer, and I don't want to see them suffer on my account, then you would not retaliate. It's interesting, like we asked you the question, if somebody hurts you, would you want to see them suffer? And some of us might say, yeah, I've felt like that. But we need more, that means we need more humility and compassion and forgiveness. So, I think one of the things that's important for us to understand, if you want to evolve spiritually, not just religiously, you want to evolve spiritually, then forgiveness is essential. It's an essential quality. You can't avoid it. And what I found by teaching forgiveness, I found that a lot of times when we can't forgive, it's a lack of compassion. We don't relate to the suffering of another person. We're just angry for what they did. And I can tell you my own story. This was so interesting because I had an issue with someone I couldn't forgive. And finally when I forgave them, I realized the reason I couldn't forgive is I lacked compassion. I didn't realize it because I was focused on what they did was wrong. And when you focus on what someone else does is wrong, you're not reflecting on anything you've done. Maybe I did something to cause them to act that way. Who knows? Or maybe my resentment is a reaction to my own issues. And this person triggered me, and I have a problem. And the problem, he's not creating the problem, he's triggering the problem that's in me, but I'm blaming him. You ever had that problem before? You don't realize it, but you say, this person makes me angry. Well, nobody made Jesus angry. There has to be some, if someone makes you angry, you have to have some capacity to be angry. If you were totally made of compassion, you wouldn't say this person makes me angry, you'd say this person makes me compassionate. Wouldn't you? Because, the person gets upset with you and it brings out compassion. Oh, they must be suffering. They're angry with me. I didn't do anything. They're angry with me. So I feel sorry for them. It can actually bring out compassion. So, would you like to hear my story? If you don't want to hear it, you can go outside. So, I was working in San Diego, that's in California, and Los Angeles, for many, many of my younger years as a devotee. And so, this event took place in 1986. And so, I was working with the GBC there. I knew him for many years. He had been made a sannyasi and a GBC when he was very young, like 6, 7 years in the movement. Then he became a guru. At the age of 27, 26. 7 years in the movement, he was 26 and became a guru. Anyone like to try that? Like, don't try this at home. It doesn't usually work out well. Anyway, he did his service from 1978 to 1986. And in 1986, he felt that it would not be good if he continued to do that service because he would let his disciples down. And if you know the history of ISKCON, some of the devotees who had that service were unable to do it, and rather than leaving the service, they actually had to leave the service because of the fault of impropriety in action. So he thought, it's better I leave before that happens. But I didn't know he was thinking that way because he never told us. And all the work that I had done for many, many, many years was leaning on him, because he was the guru of everyone who came after Prabhupada. Because in those days, you didn't really pick your guru. Your guru was assigned to you geographically. So if this were 1978, there would be one guru for New York, for New Jersey. And when you joined, they would just tell you, this is your guru. And you'd say, okay. Because that was how it was. I mean, it was that way with us, with Prabhupada. It was definitely okay. We didn't want to choose another guru. There wasn't anyone else to choose anyway, neither would we want to. So, everyone is his disciple, and he's the GVC. And so everything is really resting on him. And then, we knew he was having trouble. And we were trying to help him, but it was never really discussed. And then he decided that it would be better to leave ISKCON, and he never told anybody. He didn't tell the temple president, he didn't tell the leaders of the temple. And he had his own, many temples in California, Hawaii, Japan, I think Denver. And a letter was sent to his disciples, and he explained that I don't know if he's still capable of doing this, take shelter of another guru. So, could you imagine what happened at that time? You know the picture of the Twin Towers? It's the best way I could describe what happened. You know, everyone was traumatized. And so the temple collapsed on the heads of the few of us that were running the temple. And the disciples were traumatized. Many of them left Krishna consciousness. They left to go to other places. And so the temple just, what was a very vibrant and well-run temple, was now kind of a skeleton temple. And lots of devotees were having spiritual difficulties, and they were trying to help them. And then lots of departments had to shut down because we couldn't afford to maintain them. And most of us were just, going from the world of preaching, cultivating people, congregational programs, making devotees, to going out full-time raising money to pay the bills. It was a disaster. Some devotees got divorced, wives leaving their husbands. It was like he was holding everyone together. And he didn't even tell us. I mean, if he would have told us, maybe we could have transitioned. Can you imagine? It's like you come home one day and there's a note on the door from your wife that says, I've left you, and I've taken all the money from the bank. Like that, just devastated. Or vice versa. Your husband did that. So I felt completely betrayed. We worked together so many years, and this is what you left me. A collapsed building, traumatized devotees. And I was really upset. And I was upset for I think 18 years. And it's just how I felt. I felt betrayed. And I thought that feeling of betrayal, that's just how I will feel the rest of my life. And then I was in a workshop. It wasn't a workshop on forgiveness. But in the workshop, the person explained about forgiveness, and he said, think of someone that you have an issue with, and just try to understand they were doing their best. They weren't trying to hurt you. Yeah, that makes sense. They're struggling in their life. Just let it go. You don't need it. And I thought, yeah, I don't need it. 18 years of holding on to this. It's not good. And I let it go. And there was a transition when I let it go. First transition was I felt lighter. I felt like there was a burden in me. They say once burnt, twice shy. And so it's like I was reluctant. I'm like, well, I've been so burnt by this, I don't want to give myself again and dedicate myself on that same level. Because what if someone else does that? That when I forgave, it went away. It was gone. And there was a heaviness that went away. But the most interesting thing, listen to this. This is really interesting. You know how I'm saying I just had very bad feelings towards him. And by forgiving, I realized my mistake, is I had no compassion. Because my feeling of betrayal covered me, and it made me resent what he was doing. But after I finally was able to forgive him, I thought I should have called him, and I should have been compassionate. I said, I can understand this is difficult. You're only 27. You took disciples, and now, you have integrity. Rather than going on and crashing, you decided to pull off the road before the engine overheats, so to speak. But I didn't think that way before. But it was only when I forgave that I understood. I wasn't compassionate on him at all. I should have thought, yeah, as a young man, I should have called him. Told him I understand. What can I do for you? I didn't do any of that. I didn't talk to him. I didn't call him. Isn't that interesting? Okay, this was in 1986. At that time, I had been a disciple for 16 years. 8 of those when Prabhupada was on the planet. And of those 16 years, probably I missed like 3 Mangalartis in those 16 years, if even 3. And of those 16 rounds a day, yeah, every day. And of being out on the 4 principles and being out on the street preaching and full-time service, all of that, and still resentment. Isn't that interesting? Lack of compassion. So, if I had been more compassionate, I would have understood his suffering. I would have related to it, and I would have supported him. So a lot of times, when we are hurt, we're not compassionate because we're hurt. And if we're more compassionate, we would understand the suffering of the person who hurt us and what the challenges that they went through in their life. We do an exercise in our forgiveness workshop, which we could do someday. We could arrange, if you like. We do an exercise where you have to take the part of the person you're trying to forgive, and you have to speak as if you were them. And you speak to try to explain why they did what they did. And so you have to kind of go into their history and understand their life. And that's compassionate. Like, why did you treat me that way? Why did you do it on purpose? And this is how I was raised, abused when I was a kid, blah, blah, blah. Like that. So you get to go inside their mind and heart, and then that compassion just like changes your story. So then people say, but I forgive a person, but they keep offending me. Or I empower them. And my experience with that is that every time they offend you, just understand that they're suffering. See it as suffering. Don't see that they're trying to hurt you. And you can create boundaries with them. Boundaries doesn't mean you're condoning what they do. But if you really see people in their suffering and their weakness, one writer said that people who offend you are not monsters, they're just weak humans struggling. And when you see them as weak humans struggling, that's the picture. And compassion neutralizes anger, doesn't it? Like if you were to analyze anger and think, what is the polar opposite to anger? Turn it around. Something like compassion, because that was neutralized. Or Narada Muni said, forgiveness neutralizes anger. Compassion is part of it. So those are some thoughts to think about. I mean, I could talk for another 8 hours, but you do all kinds of exercises. But I think it's so fundamentally important to understand that as we're progressing in bhakti, the manifestation of qualities like humility, compassion, forgiveness, integrity, and so forth are meant to manifest. And if they're not manifesting, something's wrong. Maybe we're not understanding, maybe we're not chanting well. It could be many things, but it's important to understand this is like, we're taking your pulse. How do I know your health? Well, what's the value? We go to the doctor. We check your lungs, we check your heart, we check whatever, isn't it? let's check your compassion. So I have a little meter. You come to me, Dr. Mahatma, check your spiritual life. How's your compassion? Oh, it's in the red. Really? Treat that forgiveness. Let's how's your your integrity doing? How's your honesty doing? Your kindness doing? How are you treating your wife? How are you treating your husband? How are you treating your kids? How are you doing at work? How are you in the humility? Falsetto. Oh, falsetto. It's blinking. It's hitting red. We have to keep that on. Otherwise, we think, well, I do the processes, I do the rituals, I do everything efficiently well, so everything's good. It's good, but it's not the complete answer. So I think that's the lesson we learn from forgiveness. I was listening to a talk by a Buddhist teacher of meditation. She said something, I just find it interesting because I teach japa, to learn from other people who do meditation. And she said something interesting. She said, the consciousness that I am in when I'm meditating, I try to take that consciousness the whole day. I try to be in that consciousness. And I was giving a lecture, where was I? I think it was in Columbus. I was saying, or some, so I was saying, do you ever have this? Like you finish your rounds and you put your bead bag on the shelf and it's like, my rounds are done. And that whole consciousness and everything just goes on the shelf. Now it's time to roll up my sleeves. And so this lady was saying, the consciousness that I'm in, that I'm developing while I'm chanting, I try to bring that into my life and be like in japa consciousness. But for this example, being, what is that mood that I'm creating when I chant? What am I feeling? What's going on? And bring that into my life. Because if we put it on the shelf and we think, okay, we compartmentalize it. Just when I chant, I feel this way. When I go in the world, I have to feel this. I do. Then we missed it. We missed the point. It's not like that. Does that make sense? So, in the interest of time, although it's Friday night, so we have all the time in the world. But I think that's a good starting point. If you'd like to ask some questions. Yes?
Thank you so much for a wonderful talk. Typically what I think is, when people are back to us, when basically they are back to us because of our bad karma, right? They're delivering that karma to us. And so how do, and I have two questions though. So the thing is, how do we, and you kind of partly answered, or you answered it in a way that, how do we, I guess, if someone keeps on doing that all the time, right? So how do you, and we forgive because that's our principle, if we don't forgive them, how will Krishna forgive us? But then what happens when we feel like somebody's taking advantage of us? Like they keep on doing it. And even if we think, oh yeah, they're suffering, so still, like, how do we put an end to that?
I think my analysis of it is that if you separate what's going on in your heart, how you feel about this situation, and try to make that separate by forgiving, and take care of that, and then secondarily take care of the other side. Internally, I forgive them, like you say, I understand their suffering, but what they're doing to me is destroying me. I can't do it. I'm not Takahari. If you were Takahari or whatever, it wouldn't bother you. But we can't not be realistic about what bothers us. Because if we're not, then we'll drive ourselves crazy, or in almost a sense to be abusing yourself, tolerating something. So then we have to deal with the external. So in that situation, you could say, for example, I understand that the situation is difficult for me. respect. So I'm going to have to create some boundaries. So you've done the right thing spiritually by forgiving, because if you don't forgive, you're being polluted by that. Then you've dealt according to your capacity to deal with this. You had to create some boundaries that would be hard. And the reason this is important is because a lot of times people don't want to forgive. I mean, they want to forgive, but they don't because they're afraid of the consequences of forgiving, that it would empower them. And so you can be very, very clear with the person that I've forgiven you, but I pray that I have to create boundaries. I mean, it's obvious. If you have a business partner, you cheat. I like you and all that, but I can't do this. Someone robbed your house, tried to murder you, like, all right, I can forgive you, but I'm not inviting you over for dinner. Unless you're Ambarish Maharishi. Shrivasa tried to kill him and he invited him over. I want to recommend trying that if you're not on that level, and it could be dangerous also. So, as devotees, well, maybe another story. A beautiful story. I think this girl called Champa who became envious of Srivas Thakur, and he came down with leprosy. And then one day Mahaprabhu was walking by him, and he said, Mahaprabhu, please save me. Mahaprabhu said no. He couldn't believe it. He said, Gopal, you have offended my devotee. The only way we can become free from offense is to ask forgiveness. And he said, you've allowed your heart to become contaminated with envy. And he said, your heart is the most sacred place. You know, for us, the whole thing is Chaitanya Arpana. We're trying to cleanse the heart. And so what you allow in your heart, and what you don't allow in your heart, it's like what, you're on a diet, what you eat, what you don't eat. Be very careful. You don't want to contaminate your body. You don't want to contaminate your heart. So he said, Gopal, your heart is the most sacred place. How have you allowed something so dirty to into your heart? So that's why I say that no matter how you're going to deal externally with the situation, internally, don't allow resentment to sit in your heart. You may act in a way where people might think, oh, you're resentful, you're distancing yourself. But you don't have to be resentful to distance yourself. You're just protecting your own sanity. But you don't want to be motivated by resentment because now you're condemned. So I think you can better explain it to someone if you have empathy. You can tell them, I've forgiven you. This is not safe for me, or it's not healthy for me. So as people who are trying to practice spiritual life, we want to maintain a pure heart. That's very yes.
Sometimes wrong feelings depend for the basic question. So sometimes we feel like some bad feelings comes in our mind. For the devotees also sometimes. Your mind is so powerful. We try to not to think so. So at that time what we should do?
That's a good question. I'll repeat the question for you. If you want the other one, then you can pass this thing. I just bought this, I'm trying to, it's wireless. And then, because it's wireless, which means you can speak into it and but last time I turned this on, you got you want to talk into it? And you hear me on Facebook. So yeah, that's a good question. The answer is actually very simple. Have you ever heard this idea that the best way to break a habit is with a new habit? Don't just try to stop. I'm going to stop eating this. Well, why don't you start eating that? And automatically, by eating that, you stop eating the positive. So it's a bit of fake it till you make it. So the idea in the practice of bhakti is that we practice doing things and saying things and thinking things that are correct, like the way a pure devotee would do. So many things we do we don't really want to do, or they don't come natural. But they're actions which are natural when they're pure. And that's how we become pure, by doing things. So for example, if you have an ill thought toward the devotee, then the solution would be to appreciate them. Because you count the bad habit with the opposite. You do the opposite. So, now, you just think, like, well, what would be the opposite? I'm feeling this way, what would be the opposite? Maybe to say something nice. I'm criticizing them, let me say something nice. Maybe I should appreciate them. But there's something else that's important to understand. And I'll try to explain this in a way that it can go deep into your heart, because it's really important to understand this. Everyone you look at has good and bad. Everybody. And we can choose the good or the bad to look at. Right? And according to what we choose to look at, we're going to be affected by it. So if I look at you and I just think, oh, you're this and that, I'm seeing you're bad, it disturbs me. It doesn't help me at all. It disturbs me, right? It actually harms my bhakti because criticism is tamasic. So now I'm engaged in something tamasic. So it goes back to this tamasic discussion. If I look at you and I think, well, you've got this good quality, that good quality, it purifies me. It inspires me. Because I'm sattvic because I'm seeing what's good in you. So we have a choice to do that, and the choice we make is going to affect our consciousness. So if I see the good in you, I can get inspired by it. So the question to ask ourselves when we're having these ill thoughts is, why? What is wrong with me? I could be seeing the good, but I'm seeing the bad. And so we reflect, okay, something's wrong here that I need to see the bad. And so rather than think the problem is with them, we should think the problem is with me, that I'm seeing the problem in them. Now sometimes it's just objective, it's something bad, it's hurting you, it's hurting others. And it's not a question of seeing the good or bad, it's like we have to fix this is bad. They've done something bad. That's a different situation. But when it's just like a normal day and I'm just, and in my reflection on this, I have come to the conclusion that if I am criticizing, the defect is in me. Even if I can objectively say, well, you have this defect. But the fact that I'm looking at it and not looking at the good, that's my defect. That's like something's wrong with me. And that means I'm being affected by passion and ignorance. And vice versa. If I can go day after day, week after week, month after month, never criticizing a devotee and praising devotees, something must be right with me, isn't it? Obviously, right? Yeah. You know, Jayananda, we celebrated his disappearance day. So devotees said they never heard Jayananda criticize anybody. So can you imagine what consciousness a person has who never criticizes? We can imagine the consciousness a person has who always criticizes. It's very low. So what kind of consciousness does a person have to be in when they never criticize? That's like amazing, isn't it? So we can understand, oh, that's a very elevated consciousness. So what about us? Why don't we reflect on that? Like, if you had a friend who was always criticizing, you'd say, I think something's wrong with her, or she's got some issues or something. But we're always criticizing, and we don't think like that. But we should. Shouldn't we? Yeah. So, I didn't answer you how to control your mind, because often we can't. But at least we can shift. Now, as you advance and try to cultivate your Krishna consciousness, especially cultivate the quality of appreciation, you'll criticize less. You'll come to that point. But there is some rasa in criticism, and it's a tamasic rasa. We get something out of it. What do we get out of it? It's a false ego thing. You get to feel better. Every person you put down will make you feel better, isn't it? Yeah. And it's often said we put people down to feel better about ourselves. So now look at this. I think of this often, and I think we should all think like this. Don't you think there's something sick about me having to put someone down to make myself feel good? Isn't it? That's sick. I mean, I don't want to call anyone sick who's done that before, because we've all done it, but I'm just saying we can reflect on that. Isn't there something like my happiness can only come at the expense of making you unhappy, or making fun of you, or pointing out a fault, or putting you down. Something is wrong with me. Hello, everyone, obviously. And how many times have we done that and not even thought there's anything wrong with me, and only thought there's something wrong with the other person? If we've done it once, that's once too many. We've done it hundreds, maybe thousands. Isn't it? So if you're trying to advance spiritually, you have to reflect on these things. You can't just do it and not think about it and be unconscious. It's not, the point is, it's not the sign that one's progressing spiritually. The sign that one's progressing spiritually is that they're positive about everything. The devotee said, if someone said something bad about someone, Jayananda would just say, what's good about it? No, he's not so bad. He has this quality, that quality. That was his nature. That's the nature of exalted people. They see the good. You ever hear this statement, the bees don't bother trying to explain to the flies that stool is not, like the flowers are sweet and the stool is not really because that's where they get their nectar. So if we're getting our nectar from stool, it's very cumbersome. Is that okay? You had two questions? Did we answer them both?
No, can I ask the second one?
And then,
So, sorry, the second one is more of a curiosity question. You mentioned about how everything kind of collapsed in '87, and then it took you like 18 years to really forgive and come back. Like, what was that turning point, or like what happened that you actually turned around?
Basically the realization was, this is stupid to hold on to. It's hurting me. Actually, absolutely no benefit, and it's just hurting me. And it's just a weight and a burden, and it's like a little light bulb on in the car in the glove box, just slowly draining the battery. That happened to me once. My battery kept draining, and I couldn't figure out why. The glove box was not closing properly, so that little light was always on and draining. So it's like this resentment is draining you. It was, to be able to forgive is a change of heart. It's not an intellectual thing. It may be intellectual, but that it has to go into the heart, and the heart just has to just let it say, okay, let's just stop this. And I think for us as devotees, it should be quite obvious and quick. Like, I'm trying to be a devotee, and holding on to resentment is everything opposite of what it means to be a devotee. And I was at a stage in my Krishna consciousness at that point. When he left, I was 36. And you hear about when you're 50, you have midlife crisis. And it's kind of like, I think we reflect, when we're a little older, we reflect more on who we are as a person and what we do and like that. And in those early years, we were all focused on producing. All our evaluation of our self-worth was based on how many of this did we do, and how much of that did we do, and how many people came, and how many programs, and how many books, and how much money, and how many temples. And so we evaluated our spiritual advancement based on that. And because of that, we didn't look at these other things. So I'm holding on to this resentment. It's toxic. It's harming me, and I'm not even aware of it because I'm focused on the real goal is to produce. And if I produce, I'm successful. So I think it was part of growing older and just being more self-reflective and realizing this is not aligned at all with Krishna consciousness, and I'm just harming myself. And so when this facilitator said, the person wasn't trying to hurt you, I said, it's true. And I found with devotees, because I've taught forgiveness to none of them, a lot of devotees' hearts are pretty soft by the process of bhakti. So it doesn't take that much for them to just say, okay, I'll just let it go. I don't need to punish him. Because it's not really aligned with the consciousness we're trying to develop as a devotee. Right?
Yeah, I joined in '97 and the dust hadn't settled then, and nobody talked about this, but eventually people were talking. So thank you for that.
Well, just so you know, it's a challenge for many of us, and it's a natural challenge that you'll always kind of use the metrics of externals to see how you're doing in devotional service. Did I chant 16 rounds, 18 rounds, 25 on Ekadasi? What time did I get up? Did I observe this holiday, this fast? Not that we shouldn't do it, I'm not saying it's bad. But if that's the focus only, then you can be really challenged internally and not even notice it. Like we're saying, like with the criticism. You might be criticizing and not even noticing. Wait a minute, that's so tamasic. And I don't even try to rectify it. So that's just a universal problem that we all have to deal with. And part of the reason is it's easier to produce external results. The internal transformation is not easy. Like I'll give you an example in marriage. A lot of men are not good in relationships. And, their wife wants them to be all emotional and affectionate and romantic, and they're just like, I'm not romantic, I'm not emotional, which is like most men, they're not, a little bit, but not the way women want it. What was the point I was just making? I totally forgot. What was the point I was making?
It's easy to do the external changes.
Oh yeah. So external, yeah. So the man thinks, I'll work hard, I'll provide a nice house, I give my wife a car, the children go to good schools, and the wife's like, yeah, but I'm emotionally drained. Right? So for the man, it's like, I'm doing my job. These are the metrics of a good husband. You provide well, I take the kids to soccer on Saturday, you have an SUV, we'll get you whatever, the Tesla truck or whatever you want. And I'm doing it. So it's kind of like I did my rounds, I did my seva, I did and for many men it's like they don't get it. That's nice, but that's like I'd rather take the emotional connection and all these other things. And you can keep your Tesla truck out, I'll drive a Toyota, whatever. What's a small Toyota? Versa or something. So it's very similar to that. And then, it's a process. And sometimes men, they're just like, they don't get it, or they get it, but they can't do it, or whatever. So it's a challenge. The internal is hard. It's hard to change that. It's like, can I just buy you the car? Do we have to sit around and talk and be vulnerable? And I don't know how to do that. It's very uncomfortable. So it's like that with Krishna, Well, Krishna, do I have to look at my faults and anarthas and try to be kind, compassionate, sense control this? Can't I just donate to the temple and it's so much easier? And I do my artics every morning, Can I just keep doing that? So that's part of it because, and it's interesting also, it's like when people don't act the way we want them to act. We want them to change. And we're like, why don't you change? Like it's easy. You know? But reflect on yourself when you want someone else to change. Well, reflect. Are there things you've tried to change you can't? It's not easy. So that's the harder part of bhakti. But it's the most fundamental part. Krishna, like you can offer something to Krishna, but if there's no love, Krishna's like, I don't need your bananas. Hello, I crave bananas, so I don't really need your bananas. If you can't put love on your bananas, and cream and bananas and strawberries and sugar, if you can't throw love on that, like I don't need them. I get better food than you can ever make. Spiritual love. So we have to recognize that. Yes.
Thank you for a beautiful session. I had a question about the process of forgiveness. For instance, when there are two siblings, they fight. Sometimes they say hurtful things, and it's not that once you forgive, it's going to end. There are other instances in life when it's like a process, it continues. Things happen, they say hurtful things, sometimes they stay with us, and for few things it's really hard to forgive.
Well, is this, you want me to say what you say to a kid or what you say to an adult? Or, I guess it's kind of the same. I'll say something. I'll tell a story. And this story really affected me a lot. So a teacher wanted to teach how bad it is to hold on to anything, for resentment or envy or anger or whatever. How bad it is to hold on to that. And she didn't even tell the students she was going to teach that. She just told them, this afternoon when you go home, I want you to write the name of somebody you hate on a potato, and if it's more than one, each potato should have a name. As many as people you hate, write it. And I want you to put it in a bag and bring those potatoes to class. And so they brought them, and she said, your assignment for this week, so that would be Tuesday, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, is to carry that bag with you. You have to have it with you 24/7. So while you're eating, sleeping, bathing, physical education, whatever, just trust me, this is going to be, I know it's inconvenient and it's going to bother you, but just do it. I mean, if someone brought you 20 potatoes, obviously. But even one potato, it's just a hassle, right? It's just a burden. And when you carry something, a weight, it just gets heavier. So they did it, they didn't like it. And when they came Friday, she said, you can put your potatoes down. I said, well, how do you feel now? I said, oh, I feel relieved. And she said, so what I was trying to teach you is that you were carrying anger. That's what it's like when you carry anger in your heart. So whatever you were experiencing, if it was heavy, burdensome, troublesome, maybe you got the potato wet, and the odor was bothering you, it was just bothersome, troublesome, heavy. So that when you carry anger, or you could say resentment, or any tamasic quality, you have to carry it around with you wherever you go. But the opposite is true also. If you carry compassion, if you apologize, you get to experience the happiness of apologizing, the happiness of letting go, the happiness of being better. So, one exercise we do in our forgiveness workshop is we ask everyone to feel their resentment. Like, where do you feel it in your body? You feel it in your heart, your stomach, your neck, your head. Different people feel it in your shoulders. And it's like, where do you feel it? And so they would all close their eyes and kind of feel it. And then I'd ask them, come up with an analogy of how it feels. So you can get a full sense of what those potatoes feel like. So people would meditate on it and they'd say, I feel like I'm stabbing myself, I feel like I'm drowning in a lake and I created the water. I feel like there's a cement block, I feel like my neck there's a chain, to a pole, and I feel like that. And then I asked them the question, I said, did any of you realize this is how you feel? And nobody said yes. Everyone says, no, I had no idea I felt this way. And that for me, that was a huge aha. I said, oh, so we're carrying around whatever it is, the need to criticize, as we're discussing, or resentment, or whatever we're carrying around, hatred, anger, resentment, jealousy. And we don't even realize how painful it is. We don't realize how burdensome it is. But when we're compassionate, guess what? You get to carry around the feeling of compassion. And you're kind. You know, when you're kind, it makes you feel good. Because you get the whole day you feel good, because that's what you're carrying. You're carrying kindness. It's like when you do an act of kindness, it magnifies it, and then you get to carry that kindness in your heart. Right? So I think that's really important to understand, that lesson. And then he's going to go and you're number 2. Okay? He's first, you're second. Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj, for the wonderful experiences. My question, I think, is more or less as a parent who's trying to raise Krishna conscious kids. Bullying is a big subject in schools. So when kids come home and they share such experiences, how do you suggest or advise us to handle, because forgiveness and bullying are opposite of the spectrum, and you are seen as weak.
I think that same answer, that you should tell them they have to deal with it externally, but internally it should not be motivated out of resentment or anger. Because what I would tell a kid is, I said, if this person is bullying you, and you allow it to make you angry, then you're allowing that person to degrade you. So then that's what they want to do. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but names can never hurt me. That's what kids, I don't know if you ever said that when you grew up, but kids in America, when they play hopscotch, and they jump and they have arms, do you do that? Sticks and stones can break my bones, and names can never hurt me. So that's the idea. Every time someone tries to trigger us, if we are triggered, then we've allowed that person to degrade us, and then that person is done. And that's what they want. So if you're bullied and you don't get angry, it frustrates the person. Right? And so I think, there are many things we could say, but another thing, there's a saying it was a black man during the period of slavery, and he went into politics, and all his friends said, how can you be in politics? These are all white people. These were once enslaved you. And he said, I'll never allow any man to degrade my soul by causing me to become angry. So this kid is bullying you. Don't allow him to degrade you. Second thing is understand, if he's bullying you, he's got problems. He's got issues. That's why he's doing it. Something's going on in his life which is very unhealthy. He's coming probably from a very difficult background. He's got problems with his own self-esteem, and he needs to bully other people. So if you can understand that, and you could be a little, just understand. He's really hurting. If he's hurting you, because he's hurting. And that's a fact, right? Hurt people. I don't know if your kids can understand that level, but if they can understand that level, their life will be much easier. In fact, I have some good news for you. I have a course on forgiveness, I have a course on self-care, I have a course on japa, I have a course on, so many courses on vows. And I've taught these courses for years. And I always think, I wish I learned this when I was like 3. Maybe 7, something like that. I wish I learned to forgive. I wish I learned self-care. I wish I learned how to these things. And so we are in the process of training teachers now to teach my courses, because I can't teach them and all the time. And I'm asking some of these teachers to teach them for children. I want to like create massive, like all my courses I want to teach for children. Because if we would have learned this when we were young, maybe we did and we didn't pay attention, but I don't think we learned it to this degree. We would have learned these things. So lives would have been so much better and so much easier. So I think that children should learn all these things. Say nobody acts this way. Say you don't try to be like everyone else. You want to live with an integrity of what's true to you. And the biggest problem kids have is peer pressure. And if you can help them overcome peer pressure, then it's much easier for them to do this. If you want to be if your friends are pressuring you to do something that's wrong, maybe you need different friends. Maybe you have the wrong friends. Or maybe you need to tell them something for now. Maybe someone else wants to. I'm not like an expert in parenting. Someone else have experience with bullying? We didn't have that when I was young. We didn't have bullying. Okay, you have a question.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj, for the wonderful lecture. Related to Prabhuji's question, this is a situation where I spend 50 hours in a week at my workplace. I am constantly under the struggle of someone troubling my team. So at that moment, I become a parent or a protector, where I feel my dharma is to get back to that person so that in future my team is not troubled.
Yeah.
So that is a situation where I fall prey. I know I should not get back to that person. Yes, I should not.
When you say get back, you mean get back in an angry way or disturbed way?
Yes, because that's a trigger in me, and then
Yeah.
of course with the corporate world we are trained to be polished enough not to let the anger out.
Yeah.
But that's a trigger in my mind. It starts with anger.
Yeah.
And then it channelizes into how can I give a feedback, because this should not happen in the future, and someone should not trouble my team.
So what is your concern that's causing the anger? That your team is being upset. That's causing you're
Yes.
angry because your team is being disturbed.
My concern is sometimes I take that role of protector,
Yeah.
and
It's like your children are being offended.
yes, and I take it on myself that I should make sure
Yeah.
that this should not happen, rather than.
I think we all know that whenever we're given feedback, if we can feel that the person giving the feedback is not antagonistic to us and is very kind and open and genuine and just wants to help us, it's easier to take the feedback. Isn't it? If you feel that. It's also easier to take the feedback like a day or two later, not like within 10 minutes of when they do it. Isn't it? A lot of times people present situations like this to me and they say, what should I do? And I always say, it's always good to be honest, but to do it in a sattvic way. Like, this is just how I feel. This is, like what you just expressed to me, when your anger subsides and you can just be equal with the person. Say, this is my struggle. I'm trying to protect my team. They're getting disturbed. Can we talk about this? Because I want to resolve this. It's not working. And something like that. And if they don't want to talk about it, then you know what you're dealing with. So I'm just trying to be honest. I'm not trying to find fault. I just want to resolve this situation. So I don't want to talk about it. Like, what can we do to resolve this? And honest people can deal with it. And if they're not honest and can't deal with it, why would then you have to use more diplomatic tactics. Like, well, if this continues, then we're going to have to record it. When all else fails, that's the only thing that works, isn't it? Yeah. So, But I found in most of those cases when I've told devotees just be straightforward and honest in a nice way. These are devotees, so it works. People normally appreciate it. And if someone doesn't, it's probably they have some issue that's creating, and they're just in a great problem. That's what they do. I think some people were created to create problems. Some people have Shakti for, like they just disturb people. Now, another thing, a more spiritual thing is to think, well, Krishna has sent this person and there's a lot I can learn, in feelings and tolerance and, understand why I'm being triggered and what's the cause of that anger. Maybe there's something that I need to do to overcome that. So that's also there also. Take advantage of every disturbance. It's like, why am I so disturbed by this? Is it really that bad? Is this person really that bad? Is it just me? And just some reflection. So that's also. Yeah.
Hi, Doctor. Thank you for the wonderful advisement. It was very meaningful to me because I suffer with bullying, resentment, and what I can't understand, right? Someone has done something to me. When I get in a situation where I have to say what was done, is that called criticizing or say what they have done to me?
Well, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said something interesting. He said, if someone has said or done something to you and it hurt you, that to tell them is not criticizing. Because it's self-care. You have to protect yourself and heal yourself.
But I didn't tell them, I told someone else.
That's also not criticizing. He also said, if what someone does hurts others, pointing that out is not criticizing. Because it's either you need to protect yourself or protect others. The idea is you're not doing it to get back at somebody, you're not doing it to put them down, you're doing it to heal the situation. But when you're doing it to have a false ego, prop yourself up, yeah, then it's toxic. I have a feeling you're all as hungry as I am. What's the time?
47.
Good time to stop.
Excuse me. I know it's like time to stop, and everyone wants to push on. You make two very wonderful points, and I'll be glad if we can just for the enlightenment of everyone, at least I put this one first, of the two. He says sometimes, like in case of husband and wife, or even in ordinary relationships, women may think men should be more romantic, this and that. But you are making a very strong point, emphatically, that the men can't do it. They're not like that. So can you please emphasize that so it can be clear amongst the women folks?
I have to clarify.
They're expecting so much out. It creates so much difficulty. Are the men created this way and are the women created that way? It has to be that way? Can we accept it?
I would say this. It's true, and some men have a harder time than others, but at least if you try, your wife will appreciate it. Even if you can't do it, and you try.
Never meet the mark, it would seem.
You'll miss the mark, but if you try, she'll appreciate it. At least that's my experience. I try. I'm not really as good at it as maybe my wife would like me to be, but I try, and she appreciates that I'm trying. So I'm better at it than I was when I first got married.
Okay, so they can see some progress.
Yeah, at least you're trying. Like I know it's hard for you. Your wife says, so, why don't you express your feelings? And you say, what are feelings? And she looks at you like your face. What do you feel? Like, how do you feel? Tell me, like, when we do this. I never thought about it. So, she tries to help you, you express feelings.
Sometimes I see that women are attracted to men who speak and deal with them romantically. But they do not know that that same man in the house is a terrorist.
Could be.
They're thinking my husband should be like him. You know, I don't know. But, you know, the situation is like that. So
Yeah,
I think
it's
it would be, you know, we have to understand that women and men are, on this regard, are constructed differently. And, you know, some can go a far way or some can, in terms of men and women. So, we should not expect.
But the main thing is, if you're a good husband, you want to make your wife happy. She's a good wife, she wants to make you happy. So you try to do what you can. And I think also, it's like, you know, if you want to get married, then it's like, you should know that this is part of the, you know, job description. You can't just be like a bachelor, you know, like, because you're just a bachelor with your friends and you're just joking and making fun of one another and, you know, slapping one another on the back and being sarcastic with them, and they like it. If you're getting married, you can't do that with a woman. She doesn't like that, right? Sometimes I'm with my friends and we'll be sarcastic. My wife said, "How could you say that to them? That's so rude." It's not. We're men. We don't see it like that. So, but if you're a man, you're gonna get married. It's like, hello, you're not single anymore, and you have to adapt because you're living in a house with that requires something different. That much at least. Okay, Mahatma, go
Thank you, Maharaj, for the wonderful class. But I have one request. I want to listen from you, Govind Adi Pursa.
Can we take prasadam first? You have kirtan after?
I heard this one, we were in Houston, Texas, Shri Radha Nilwada temple in 2013.
Oh, yeah.
You sing that, we were amazed.
Okay, if you stay late.
And you play some instrument also there with that.
I have books up there and so many things. If you buy a lot, I'll sing it. If there's a lot of books left, I don't know. We have t-shirts also. Help support our preaching. Thank you. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Hari Hari.